Welcome to this week's VVBGA Grower webinar on the NAP program of the Farm Service Agency, which provides disaster coverage for many types of horticultural crops. Today we'll hear from Jacob Mills of McDonald Farmstand in Danville and hear about his experience with the NAP program last year. Then Julie Jacque of the Farm Service Agency will explain the details of the program. Thanks for joining today. I'm Andy Chamberlain from the University of Vermont Extension, and take it away, Jacob.
Um, so after that storm, July 11th, probably 90% of our crops were really, really damaged outside. We didn't really exactly know what to do. It wasn't a flooding event. We had a lot of rain that year, obviously. I want to say, and was it? Yeah, it's July 11th, not June, that the storms were. I think in July that year, we had 19 inches of rain at the farm, I believe. Kind of on a hillside, but so I'm not like worried about flooding with a river. But what really did us in was the hailstorm. So once that happened, we didn't really have much for crops outside. We weren't harvesting anything a lot yet. We had greens that we were harvesting, but a lot of stuff was still pretty immature for the most part. All our brassicas, um, like carrots were still fairly immature, and just like summer squash and zucchini. Like we had started harvesting a few crops, but most of them were in a pretty young stage. So yeah. So I guess after that, I reached out to FSA and I talked to Patty, who is the woman in the St. J office that we deal with, and Mary has also been very helpful there. And they put me in touch with Julie. So Julie ended up coming out to the farm. I think it was probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 days later. It was pretty close to after the storm, and kind of assessing a lot of the damage. I guess with the program, one thing that really kind of opened my eyes was the record keeping aspect that had to go along with it, as far as what crops you had planted, when, where, and and then I didn't have a lot of past records. I had some before that year, but as far as like ideally you would have 3 full years of average yields for that crop in that area per se. But there's also the county average, which can be used if you don't have those records. How accurate the county average is, it's probably varies from crop to crop. I found some crops to be a lot easier to kind of keep track of these yields or even harvest with. Keep in mind, I'm still a pretty small farm. We grow a large diversity of vegetables, greens, strawberries, pumpkins, squash, some brassicas. Um, so to keep track of every crop, exactly how much you get it's doable, but it doesn't always happen in the middle of the summer when we're busy. So um, another experience with it is we grow a fair amount of sweet corn, and corn is not covered under the NAP program. One crop that we also grow a fair amount of is pumpkins, and that is covered under the NAP program. And if I remember correctly, I don't have the numbers in front of me exactly, but pumpkins are a fairly high valuable, like higher paying crop in the program. And strawberries were as well. Those two things have I kind of stick out to me as sort of the staples, or the couple things that paid pretty well out of the program. And they're also fairly easy to keep track of. It's like a lot of the time with your pumpkins, it's sort of one harvest, so you have a pretty good idea of what you get. It's a lot easier to kind of like manage. Same with strawberries. The harvest season's a fairly short season, so it's pretty, for us anyways, it's a fairly easy crop to like, oh, we got 7,000 pounds this year. for out of this acre, or I'm the year that we applied for the NAP program in 2023, we had about an acre of strawberries, and I think harvested like 40 quarts off from it. They all were destroyed more or less from the rain that we had, and once the hailstorm hit, it was really kind of the end of it. All the leaves were shredded. I mowed them off and renovated them after that. Um, so yeah, I guess as far as a lot of it goes, it's just record keeping, having a good relationship with FSA and the people you work with. As far as there's some documentation that goes along with it. There's a fair amount of pictures, and yeah, kind of just record keeping more or less was part of it, and that's something that we're always trying to improve upon around the farm, but is kind of it's a challenge for us. I will say that. Yeah.
Thanks. So Jacob, I have a couple quick questions and maybe some others do, and then we'll turn it over to Julie to hear all the details of the program. Did you just have the basic NAP coverage, or had you bought up to higher level of coverage?
I just had the basic coverage. I hadn't bought up. To be honest, before that storm, I had never really worked with the program at all. I didn't know much about it, to be honest. It sort of was, Patty had mentioned it down at the office about that I could probably apply for it with what happened. So that was the first kind of hearings and doings of us using that program.
And you did that before the storm, obviously, right? You can't do it after the fact.
I know the basic. Well, I called in after the fact of it coming. It wasn't. I called that day that it happened, and kind of asked like if there was anything that was out there, and she mentioned the NAP program. I think if you're gonna, I don't know, Julie would know better, but I think if you're gonna buy up, you probably have to do that before. But as far as like I had been doing crop reports and everything with FSA. I guess as far as the NAP program, I hadn't. It happened. I kind of had applied and did it all right when the storm happened.
Okay. And did you get the free coverage for the basic because you're farming for 10 years or less, or some other category?
Yeah, it's because I was a beginning farmer, which I believe is going to be running up sooner than later.
Great. Any other questions from the group before we turn to Julie? Hey, Joey. All right. Well, that's a good overview of your experience. And just curious, any other farmers here that have NAP coverage on their farms? Joey, Sue?
Yeah, I was trying to get our TV turned down. We do not have any NAP coverage.
Okay. All right. Well, to help you understand whether you might want to or not, we'll turn it over to Julie from Farm Service Agency. She's got a lot of info about the program, and I know she works really hard to try and make it work for farmers. And I always say, don't shoot the messenger. It's a complicated federal system. And I know people have been having conversations about how to make it work even better, but here to tell us how it works now is Julie.
Well, thanks, Vern, for putting this together, and thanks, Jacob, for coming on and talking about, our experience and kind of how we got started with NAP. And unfortunately, it does end up being kind of in that disaster year that kind of assessing what you might have in place or not, or finding out what you don't have in place, and that kind of leads us down the road of how to make it better the next time a storm comes across or up and down or through Vermont. So yes, and Jacob did have that coverage under the CCC-860 form, or that certification form he had on file for another purpose, that, you know, resulted in him being able to access the NAP program at the basic level when the 2023 weather events happened. So, you know, that was kind of our importance in 2023 of contacting the county office. And thank you for posting that, Vern. A lot of people did have that form on file, and that form is certifying a limited resource farmer, beginning farmer, which is 10 years or less, and a veteran beginning farmer, the socially disadvantaged farmer. So all of those different self-certifications can result in free basic coverage. And it also can result in, if you are kind of applying within the deadline timeframes, is a 50% premium discount for the buy-up coverages. And that's maybe something that folks aren't aware of, that you know, that discount is pretty substantial. And it also applies the language. I'm not sure if they have a different form or if they're using the same form, but under federal crop insurance, as Jacob mentioned, sweet corn is something that's covered under the federal crop insurance and not NAP. Those discounts also apply under the same categories for the federal crop insurance policies. So it's something, again, for awareness and looking into how that could benefit you know, various operations across the state.
Hey, real quick, Julie just mentioned women-owned businesses also qualify, right? 50% owned by women,
Yep.
which is different than NRCS. So to me, like right there, that's a lot of our farms. And
Right.
also on the insurance itself side, like sweet corn, isn't it sweet corn, orchards, peaches? Are there any other horticultural crops that you can't get through NAP, you get over on that side of the insurance equation?
So sweet corn is the probably the universally nothing we can touch for NAP. Field corn. Peaches are only insurable, I think, in 2 counties of Vermont. I know Windham in particular, and maybe one other county. We can get written agreements, you know, if it's not offered in the county. And apples is, there's just a couple counties that are NAP covered, and all of them, the remaining counties would be for apples under RMA. Again, you
Okay.
can get written agreements for
I
them.
guess my point was just mostly everything we grow is under NAP, and there's a few exceptions.
Right. So apples, peach, right, if you're looking to abbreviate that, right. But blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, those are not covered under crop insurance. Those are under NAP. Yep. Okay. Sorry about that. So I do have a few slides to just kind of talk about some of the various components here. I'm going to try to share them. So,
And I put the form in the chat, and my understanding is you can file that any time of the year.
yes.
The March
Yep.
15th deadline is only for buying up. So there's no harm in getting that form in.
Anytime. Sure. Yep. Okay. I'm going to leave it there just so I don't want to mess it up with our time constraints here. And Vern's also sharing we'll share the presentation if you want to look at it in further detail. So hopefully I've kind of jumped to the overview screen. There we are. Okay. So again, so NAP is, it's kind of meant to protect the cost of production and not necessarily a revenue. It's not a revenue policy. And I think that's an important distinction to make. We have some presentation, some slides in here to talk about a little elaboration on what Jacob talked about of what the participant needs to do, and that record keeping is a really important part of that. Okay. And we want to just kind of go over some of the major takeaways. Okay. Again, it's a safety net program, and we're trying to get that messaging out of what's the best risk management plan, and does NAP fit in that? Does crop insurance or microfarm or some other product fit in that? We kind of talked about hoop houses as a measure of risk management. So what's the best disaster preparation plan for you and for your operation? Okay. And how do we kind of build a relationship with FSA county office, as we can kind of help offer those resources for you. Okay. Again, growing season plan. We did do this presentation with UMass Extension. So that's kind of some of our notes in here kind of talk about this disaster preparation and what's your growing season plan. Okay. Know your options. File a crop report. That's kind of where Jacob and I started, right? Where and when did you plant this particular square footage or acreage? And then we kind of summarize that through the season, because again, NAP is mostly a yield based coverage. And then how do you keep track of the production you took off of the square footage or the acreage? Okay. So again, knowing the rules, it's like reading your car insurance or homeowner's insurance or life insurance. It is an insurance type product or program, right? So we do have our basic provisions that outline all of the lingo and rules. Those can be found on the intranet or through our county office. And we also have our FSA website that can offer up the linkage here. So, and I did kind of bring that up here to share. Hopefully you're seeing that, where our website has an estimator for the premium calculator. If you want to know how much is an acre of carrots going to cost me, that can be estimated online or through your county office. And the basic provisions or rules are posted here, also kind of interpreted in some different languages. And also is that important certification form to access free or reduced coverage form, the CCC-860 form. Some different fact sheets, and also our crop table. And what that means is our yields and prices that Jacob referred to. If you come in for the first time and you don't have previous records, we can look at the county established yields or average yields using ag statistic data. Some for Vermont, we also use NAS and some producer data based on what people have submitted to Vermont that have participated to come up with an Olympic average. And it's also got some links to RMA here. Okay. So those are some resources to kind of find that information. Again, if you are looking for the buy-up coverage levels, we do have a growing history requirement, and that's fairly easy to meet. We haven't run into any problems with that. Something else when you're looking at coverage, that crops are kind of grouped together, right? So summer squash and zucchini squash, for instance, are grouped together for kind of one crop versus winter squashes that have a different growing maturity and maybe management. So there are some different grouping categories that go into kind of calculating your coverage or looking at your coverage. Okay. There are also some NAP factors that apply to assessment of a payment. So if you didn't, so like the flooding, if we didn't incur the cost of a harvest, then we do have a reduction to the payment because you didn't, again, if we're talking about cost of production, then we would not be paying you for, there's a reduced indemnity, if you will, based on that. Okay. crop reports are really important, again, because it's a yield-based coverage. We're taking that, we're covering your yield per acre. Okay, so accuracy of what you've planted and where is really important. And I think Jacob and I had a legal size piece of paper where we had his planting plan. And basically we said where we planted when, and I summarized that into the crop report to total the acreage at the end. It was really helpful. It helped me understand his operation and also understand his crop rotation and planting successions so that I could know when to check in with him to capture kind of the next round of plantings for him. Okay, the deadlines are, for crop reporting is around July 15th, but we know you're busy doing things way before July 15th. So we're checking in kind of I would say early season plantings and then kind of following through. And we might check in again in August or to see what you've planted for fall crops. I think these reports are really valuable to kind of have you look at the summary of your operation. So this is kind of an example of all of the months or different check-ins we did with an operation. At the end, we'll say how many kind of fell in a particular plant, how many acres fell in a planting period, and all of the different crops that producer grew within that planting period are summarized here. Okay, so that's crop reports. Production reports is another really important thing. Why do I need to provide them? What's considered okay? And what happens if I don't have records? So the point of the program is to use your own production information. So it's really important that we come up with some sort of system. And I think, Jacob and I used anything from QuickBooks to him writing out what he harvested for his strawberries. And so it can be a picking log. It can be what we call, a contemporaneous or a diary type system to some sort of, automated QuickBooks sales records. It's all kind of a comparison, and what we can kind of say that seems reasonable and reliable, right? Okay. If you don't have records, there are lots of ways to do it. I've seen a clipboard with a tick sheet at a cash register from minute and fine detail to, again, we've looked at QuickBooks sales have been really helpful to kind of have that unit of measure and, value of production. Okay. And we can work with you to kind of come up with what works. What are you already doing, and what are some nuances in that system you already have that could kind of meet the program rules. A maple sap is an example where I've had farmers on their boil days write down the number of gallons of each grade they've made on a calendar, and we've copied that, and that's then translated back to maple sap from the syrup they made from that sap. So again, it can be being at the dairy conference yesterday, looking at all the different notebooks at the vendors and the trade show. I thought, oh, that's a nice little pocket notebook. We could write down, what you planted, what you've harvested. It could be as simple as a pocket notebook. We're pretty flexible. If you're worried about reporting or coming up with a system or need some help to get started, again, that's where Jacob, we met in person, right? I came out to the farm, learned about the operation, learned about the planting successions, and we kind of looked at what he had for productions. There's we do a lot of that complimentary and as customer service. But if there's also folks that say, you know, I don't have time to really walk through the field with you and do that. Can I pay for you to measure my acres? So that service is available, and we use GPS, or we've in some small acreage where GPS doesn't quite connect as well or give us an accurate reading. We do have measuring wheels to help kind of document your acreage, but also help document your production too. We can also measure the bins of pumpkins or bins of squash and things like that to help you document it. So what we're kind of hoping to kind of talk about today is what should the participant or potential participant do to kind of look at the NAP program. So here you are today doing your due diligence to kind of assess what this coverage might look like. You know, can you think about a planting plan for acreage and tracking your harvest, and, you know, and find some time to report these things to FSA. And because FSA is kind of your crop insurance agent, if you will, and reporting to FSA, not just production and acreage, but, and, you know, when you're experiencing apparent crop issues, it's really important to let us know that. And a lot of people have said to me over the years, I didn't think it was a big deal, right? And when we kind of look at your production through the year, we'd say, hey, what happened? This crop was a 40% loss compared to your average. Oh, I didn't want to say anything. It wasn't a big deal. But if you've taken the time to get that coverage and participate in the program, that is a big deal. So use it. Don't be afraid to use it and say, oh, someone else could benefit from the money or whatever. Lots of different reasons why people didn't think it was a big deal or didn't want to report it. But having that coverage in place, you know, let us know that something's going on, or we hear there's a hailstorm in the news, or maybe we don't hear about it. Call us up and let us know that, you know, something's not looking right. And, you know, in some cases, when we looked at Jacob's crops and said, well, the hail definitely damaged this crop, but maybe we're going to wait and see what happens. Maybe we pick off the leaves of kale and it's going to kind of flourish and be okay. Or, you know, when he had continued rains and it washed out an entire section of a planting, you know, are we going to replant? What are we going to do? So we kind of helped you work through what to do next. When you're looking at the coverage, I think, and Jacob and I were kind of talking about this a little bit before the call, I think a lot of us get really excited when we say, oh, it's free coverage and I've got 40 different crops. And that's great. But until we decide, oh, we've got to do production tracking on all of these 40 crops, and, you know, maybe the beautiful red radishes that we like in our farm stand to add color, they aren't our huge moneymaker. They're an aesthetic value. What crops are really financially important to your operation that you kind of bank on, that you may want to look at a higher coverage level versus the catastrophic level? And that's where he kind of said, you know, strawberries or pumpkins or a higher cash value. Maybe that's something you want to have or look at a different coverage level than just the catastrophic coverage level. Okay. We do also have some pricing options where, so kind of our crop table that you can look at online now, we set all of them, and they're set, I set them based on recommendations from Ag Statistics and Vern's list that he kind of looks at. I look at the farm loan pricing that they come up with. So I kind of set one, what we kind of call conventional price. And then we also include, we can, bump up that conventional price to add a little value to it for an organic price. And we can also, if you're doing direct market, we can look at a slight bump in that conventional price if you're doing direct marketing as well. So there are some pricing options in built into the NAP program based on a couple of things, you know, organic or direct direct marketing that you might want to look at. And the coverage in the past years, we've tried to encourage participation in NAP by kind of linking it to other ad hoc programs or support. So for instance, say if you applied for a disaster benefit, and they said, okay, you did not have NAP at the time, but we're gonna, you know, offer you some program benefits under a disaster program. However, we're going to require you to purchase NAP for the next 2 years or something like that. That's are things we've done in the past. What we have been doing under USDA programming recently would be if you had NAP or crop insurance and apply for disaster assistance, we are increasing your payment factor. So we say everybody can apply for, you know, I'm trying to remember the names of the acronyms, but, you know, emergency response program or something like that. And we kind of look at the applicant and say, did you have one of these products in place? If not, you are, you know, paid at 60%. If you had coverage under one of them, you can get up to 95% of the calculated payment. So there's some additional benefits based on having coverage in place that could come into play down the road.
So Julie, just so I understand, that's if, for example, there's a disaster declaration and funds are made available above and beyond these normal programs?
Yeah, so sometimes, yeah, so disaster declarations are really how that kind of fits in my program world would be. We don't have to have one for NAP. I think that's a common misconception. Those disaster designations are kind of notifying the chain of command that Vermont has had reportable losses and percentages of loss. Some of our ad hoc disaster programs, they don't really look necessarily at a disaster designation, but that does help support that passing of that additional money, if you will. Okay. Is that answering your question, Vern?
Yeah,
Or-
thanks. I mean, the way I understand it, when there are other funds available, being signed up for NAP is helpful to get access.
It can enhance that application. Yep. Okay. The next few slides I'm not going to cover for the sake of time, but I kind of went through a couple of Bugs Bunny with carrots scenarios from calculating his premium cost and having, you know, kind of showing you what that looks like. I always just pick an acre. We can enter the county expected yield, or we can enter your own yield to kind of estimate what a premium might cost you. And then also reminding you that if you file that CCC-860 form, it's automatically going to show you what the reduced 50% premium cost would be. So those are really quick to run. So if you want to ask your county office, like, hey, what is it for strawberries? You know, what does it cost me for an acre of strawberries? They could run that, and it shows you the different levels. So I didn't really talk about that too much, but the top tier that we can cover is 65% of your production is what we would cover. A 35% deductible, if you will, and 100% of the price, down to kind of 50% of your production, 100% of the price. The catastrophic coverage, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself if I scroll down through my slides here. Yeah, I'm kind of getting there. If I scroll back up here. here we go. The catastrophic coverage, you have a 50% deductible, meaning you have to lose 50% of your average crop, what you tend to expect. And then we're only paying you on 55% of that price. So that's 55% of the price that we've established is a really big hit, right? So you've already lost half your production or more. And then we're really dinging you on the price because it's kind of free disaster coverage. And it's a little bit to kind of get you through something. Okay. But the buy up, again, a really, really affordable price is if you were to say, okay, I can take a 50% of my production hit, but I want 100% of the price, exponentially increases that indemnity amount or the payment amount. Okay. So again, running some of that cost scenario, I think is helpful for you to assess the coverage. And I'm happy to run those for people. This is kind of what the crop table information looks like. So like our broccoli in Vermont has 2 planting periods. I kind of split up the season, kind of early season broccoli and then late season broccoli. The county expected yield, which is really every county in Vermont has the same yield and price, is 3,267 pounds per acre. That's the county expected yield. And the price per pound of broccoli is $1.83 and a few more pennies on top of that. So just kind of putting that in perspective for you.
And how much would organic and direct market increase those prices?
Sure. So the organic market price would be is 145% of that. And the direct market price is 130% more than that.
And they get combined, so it's 100.
I'm thinking how it works is you'd probably want to pick the higher of, right? So if you're an organic operation, I would say don't worry about the paperwork of direct market of 130%. Just take the organic price, 145% more. Another thing that I think is a really important tool if you have coverage is these summary of coverage. What have we talked about? What have we signed up for? What my coverage level? It's got the pricing on here. It's got deadlines on here. It's got reporting requirements on here. This is mailed to you quarterly. So say you were a strawberry grower and you bought strawberry coverage in November, and then you also grow pumpkins. That deadline to sign up for coverage is March 15th for spring seeded crops. You would, get a quarter or two of your strawberry information. And then once you added on your spring seeded crops, you would have that information added to your quarterly mailing. And again, I think it's really important to be looking at this so you know the deadlines of crop reporting, production reporting, all of those things it would be valuable information to kind of make sure we're keeping in touch between the farmer and FSA. Again, the weather reports have been pretty tough the last few years. And how do we, I think this is my slide to say, people don't want to appear bothersome to us. So if you suspect something's wrong with your crop, reporting to the office is really important. And it's okay if the crop ends up faring fine, but in the times where it really doesn't kind of turn around, and having multiple events throughout the growing seasons, it's a little something to help protect you through these crazy weather times.
And Julie, you had disease on there. Is that
I
an
do.
eligible loss, not just weather?
So disease is an interesting one because and heat are two what we call secondary losses, right? So we always have to attribute those two categories with another primary weather condition, right? So disease doesn't just happen, is not specifically a primary reason for loss. So like our friend Phytophthora, right? If you are losing your crop because of Phytophthora, but there's some weather event that brings that disease out, right? If it's really, really wet and the crop is, not flourishing because of Phytophthora and the wet weather, we can kind of say, well, we're acknowledging the disease is what's killing the plant, but we've also had 8 inches of rain and there's no ability to manage that crop, that disease. So yes, some diseases can be kind of secondary reasons because we can't get to the proper management, right? So disease takes over. Same with insects, right? If you've got some kind of insect that comes in with a storm, then it's okay that the insects damaged it as long as there were good management practices. What did you do to mitigate that, or was it something out of your control due to the weather that exacerbated it? Good question.
Thanks.
And the couple of loss examples I put in here just showed what we paid at the catastrophic level. This was a strawberry grower where we paid them $1,700 for just under an acre. If they, at the catastrophic level, if they had buy up, it would have been about $4,700. And then it just shows what the premium cost would have been, the full amount on just under an acre is $362, or if they half price if they had the 860 on file. So just compare and contrast what that coverage level might mean. This is someone who was a hay producer. Again, 450 acres of hay, which are just, our yields were just, we just couldn't get the hay crop. Was a $60,000 payment for buy up coverage on hay. And here's an example of carrots where we had different planting periods. Some were harvested, some were washed away and unharvested. That just shows where we had small acreage, let's see, 0.2 and 0.05 acres of carrots. So small plantings yielded a $458 payment at the catastrophic level. If we had purchased buy up, it would have been totaling $1,100 minus about a $90 premium. So you can look at those closely in further detail, and you could also give us a call or county office a call to kind of look at those a little bit more scrutinizing. I know this is a little bit small and I didn't get a chance to update it for Vermont, but we do post our deadline dates. So our sales closing date, and why this meeting is really timely, is March 15th is our what we call sales closing day or application closing date to look at buy up for your spring seeded crops. If you have filed an 860 form already and you have not opted out of NAP on that 860 form, you might already have catastrophic coverage in place. So you might want to touch base with your office and find out. We can, if you want buy up coverage, you would need to meet those sales closing dates. So for instance, our perennial date is November 20th, say for strawberries. But we do have late file provisions to, if you wanted to look at buy-up coverage on some of those small fruits that have gone by. And I think our maple and honey deadline went by in December. Those dates stay the same. The dates we try to have them match, we're required to have them match the RMA dates as much as possible. So March 15th is, the corn date. So that's any spring seeded crop would be March 15th. Okay.
Well,
So-
Julie, there's just a few minutes left, so if you
Yes.
could wrap up, we could take a few questions.
Perfect. So if you think you've got a problem, give us a call, right? And
And these
It's
slides will get
complicated.
posted so you can go over them
sure.
more carefully and closely.
Yep. And so March 15th, that's also the deadline. Again, micro farm is that revenue policy the RMA has. That is the deadline to look at whole farm or micro farm if for revenue base. And I'm always happy to take phone calls and emails to answer any questions along with our I think we have 9 service centers. We're happy to chat with any of you. So thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And yeah, if you can stop sharing, we can see folks. And I think Nancy, you had your hand raised?
Yeah, I had a question about the RMA policies. So when you had mentioned that NAP can cover hay, how does that interact with pasture, rangeland, and forage insurance? Like, can a
Mhm.
producer have both, or like how do those interact together?
Sure, that's a great question. So because the NAP forage production is an yield-based policy, and the PRI rainfall index is kind of ensuring rain or not rain, you can actually have a double benefit in that case. We just wouldn't want you to have an Apple policy with a yield-based policy with NAP and a written agreement yield policy with RMA, right? That would be a duplicate benefit. But yep, a lot of whole farm and the rainfall indexes can be dovetailed with yield protection. Yep.
And the same with like the micro farm?
Yep.
All the
Yep.
same. Wow,
Yep.
that's great.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is pretty good.
So the micro farm, as I understand it, that used to be the whole farm revenue where you're basically ensuring your income, not crops, and you can buy at different levels. But my understanding is there aren't many policies in place in Vermont. Do you have any idea why it isn't attractive to producers?
I think so. I personally didn't know about them. So it's whole farm revenue, and then micro farm is underneath that because it's based on sales, right? And I don't want to quote, RMA policy, but there's a certain threshold. If you're under certain dollar sales, you could be in micro farm. If you're over a certain dollar sales, you're just a regular whole farm. And so the micro farm was, again, geared towards smaller farms and less record keeping. I didn't learn about it until 2023 when the flooding came through. I said, gosh, I really wish there was like a revenue, something else besides whole farm. And RMA is like, we do have something, but we didn't have a lot of outreach here. And I think the whole revenue policy writing, I think we've struggled in this area of the country in having agents that are willing to do that. They're kind of used to corn and soybeans and hay policies. So we did some outreach with RMA to kind of get the word out about the policy, and we were told, agents need to write these policies. So if we're hearing of kind of resistance or unwillingness, RMA wanted to hear about it so we could make sure farmers are having access to those types of policies.
So to be clear, those are sold by a certain group of private insurance people who know the program, and the cost is subsidized by
Right.
USDA risk management. And to Nancy's point, can you have microfarm and NAP? I think you said yes, right?
Yes. Yep, you can. Hmm. We can help you find a list of agents if you need that. That's also on the RMA .gov website is an agent locator. If you're not finding what you need there, we're happy to help you find somebody. I know we have a good working relate. We're not supposed to recommend agents at all, but we do have a lot of people with Apple Insurance, for instance, go through Crop Growers, Arthur Carroll out of Maine, Rain and Hail, and I believe Farm Credit has some crop insurance references or resources.
Yeah, Arthur Carroll was at our vegetable annual meeting, and
Mhm.
I think they're eager to engage with folks.
Sure. Yep.
Anybody else have something on their mind that hasn't had a chance to ask? Joey, with all that you've been through, are any of these programs resonating with you, or any concerns you'd want to share with Julie?
I wanted to listen today to just kind of get some more information about it. We have talked to our FSA office a little bit about it too. I don't think we qualify no matter how you spin our farm with the free coverage type thing, but it definitely resonates with me. It still feels a little bit, maybe it's a little bit more than pennies on the dollar, but it still, first off, feels like a lot of work for not fantastic coverage. But I'm going to keep looking into it, and it's at least for our size. But it's something, and we need to do something and not nothing. So it was good information.
And one really important way forward to make this program stronger, I know I've talked with Julie about it, is if we had more credible price reporting that would allow higher payments, I think that would help, because I think generally when you look at what's been used to what people actually say that they are selling their crops for, seems to be a bit of a disconnect. And I think some of that's just what people report to NASS. Certainly the national levels are way low. So anyway, we're going to try and reboot that price, typical price list, price and yield lists, and with a group of growers, and see if we can't help with the payments.
So one little side note on that, and I think I put it in one of my slides, but that price, yes, it's used for payments, but it's also used to calculate your premium. So we want to be careful there too of, not, we don't want to
Gotcha.
hurt people on the backside of that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. All right. Well, we're just about at time. I do appreciate everybody showing up and sharing or listening. I'll put the thank you slide, Julie. That was great. Jacob had to go, but we appreciate it. And just to let you know, got some great webinars coming up, shifting more to production focus. And we've been supported by the Transition to Organic program through NOFA Vermont. Thank you for a lot of these series are focused on organic production. This allium series, I mean, I know Ann is awesome, but Christy Hopeting at Cornell has been working on alliums for, I don't know, 30 years or something. She is an absolute wealth of knowledge. And then, of course, those two grower speakers, Dave Marchant, Kevin O'Dwyer, are incredible strawberry growers. So hope you can show up for some of those. And the series goes all the way through the end of April. So I'll see you online in the near future. Thanks, everybody.